this. Please stop.
What's up guys, it's Tajae here, back with another Last of Us Part 2 informational video, and today I actually want to go through and do a direct comparison from the E3 gameplay demo that we got back in 2018 and the new gameplay that we got here in 2019. Now the reason why I actually want to go through and do this comparison is because I want to see how much has actually, changed since we seen the game a year and a half ago compared to what we just saw a week ago during Outbreak Day. And then hopefully by the end of the video we can come up with a verdict if this game has been downgraded or not and if things have been removed. And the reason why I'm actually doing this is because we all know that the original Last of Us game, the one that we all love, there was things inside their gameplay demo that they showed before the game actually released that did not make it to the actual final version of the game on PS3 due to memory limitations. So I actually want to go through and see if my boy Anthony Newman, as he talked about the AI and all the different animations, and just see how much actually would just make it to the final game. But before we get into today's video, if you guys could go ahead and throw a brick at the like button, let's shoot for 350 likes. I really appreciate that. As well, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new for daily Last of Us Part 2 quality content. And without further ado, let's get right into today's video. So guys, before we actually compare some of the bigger details of the game, such as the AI or the enemy interaction, as well as different things such as the different animations that they have in the game, they're very subtle but at the same time so detailed that you wouldn't even think that it'd make it to the final version of the game. We're going to instead start on a smaller scale, for example, such as like the heads-up display, things such as like the weapon wheel and Ellie's clothes, maybe, like etc., stuff like that, like very small things that the developers over at Naughty Dog actually want to scrap out and just change, just because they had a little change in mind of how they want things to look on the final version of the game. So to start things off, I want to talk about the first thing that I actually noticed that changed, and that is Ellie's backpack. Now this is only cosmetic, it has really nothing to do with the gameplay at all. But originally Ellie's backpack actually had one patch, which is the patch that we all know from like the first game, which is like the set of wings that's on the back of the backpack. But now she actually has like a second patch on her backpack, and it looks like it's like a space shuttle, I think it is. It looks like a space shuttle like before it takes off. So yeah, she now has two patches on her backpack, if that means anything to you. Now secondly, what I noticed is that they actually got rid of the stealth gauge, and for me this really sucks because I actually like the whole idea of being able to have like an idea of how seen or how hidden you are, because pretty much if you went prone and you're like in grass, the little bubble went even smaller than if you're out in the open. It was bigger. If you're seen by enemies, it's like flashing white. And I personally thought it was like a great idea. I thought it was a really cool idea that they should have kept in the game. And honestly, it's kind of like a sixth sense of like awareness of like your status of what's going on around you, and now like they just scrapped it. So I mean, it was a cool idea, but sadly it didn't make it into the final version of the game. As you guys can see, they actually kind of got rid of the bubble, and then now like the gun sits in place of where it was. Instead of more to the left, it's like dead center inside the circle now. So yeah, stealth gauge is removed. Since we are on the topic of the heads-up display, I actually want to say that the heads-up display is actually repositioned a little bit. Like before, like the health was like on the complete half circle, now it's kind of shifted down a bit. And then of course, as I was just talking about before, the gun is actually more centered inside the circle. Now something else that I actually noticed, which is something that they have not done in any other of their shooter games, is that now with our ammo you can see what's in your magazine, and then you can also see what's in your stockpile. Before they just kind of had it all metric together with one big number. Then under that number you could actually have a visual representation of what's inside your magazine. It'll be like the actual separate bullets in a picture, and as you shoot the bullets it unhighlights. But now you actually don't have to pay attention to the visual representation, because you can now see two different numbers. What I mean by that exactly is that one number is actually the amount of bullets you have in your magazine, and then the other number is your stockpile, and of course as you reload it subtracts it from the stockpile and adds it to the magazine. Pretty much is now more of a numerical representation. You can see it more numerically instead of throughout a visual depiction where you have to really kind of like guess and check. Honestly, this change isn't really that big of a deal. Some people may like it, some people may not. Personally, I think I like the old way better, just because you just group it all together like, oh, I got 12 bullets. But now you kind of got to like add two numbers together to really know how much you have, which would actually in turn make it less simple to actually depict how much you have on the fly. You not have to add two numbers really quick. And I mean, my math is good, but why not just show me the whole number other than showing me two numbers and I add it? You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say it's more of like a personal preference type of thing. So the next thing I actually want to bring up and talk about is the weapon wheel. This still has to do with the HUD, and pretty much they made another change, which this is to be expected. I feel like HUD changes happen like a lot in development, but they actually made to where the weapon wheel is, instead of it being like very roundish, it's kind of more like made up of a box shape. And when you actually go look at the E3 gameplay, you can actually see whenever they showcase the weapon wheel like how very like circled off it is, and then now it's like more of that uniform look I was talking about. So yeah, the weapon wheel has definitely changed, and I prefer the new way. I think the more boxy look is like more uniform, and then when you select over it, you can kind of see that circular. I think that's like way better in my opinion. Then lastly, for like the small changes that we actually can see inside the game, is that in the E3 gameplay, for whatever reason, the hammer, it just had like hella durability. Like it could take a lot of hits before it breaks. And it turns out inside the E3 gameplay, they had it where the hammer could take 10 hits, but now inside the final game, it actually takes 5 hits. Now, also something I noticed is that before, as you like hit and use the weapon, the durability breaks down to the left, but now in the final version of the game, the durability actually breaks away to the right. So again, that's another little HUD change, but with the whole like amount of hits, I think that's more of like them doing balancing of the weapon so we wouldn't have too many hits with the hammer, because I feel like 10 hits for melee kills that's kind of ridiculous if you think about it. 5 seems more realistic in the world of The Last of Us, plus it being a hammer. I'm pretty sure we'll have more hits with the machete or whatnot. So yeah, they did some weapon balancing. So now that we actually just saw that scene from the new game, you can see that weapon disarming from enemies is back. So that is not something they just showcased, and it's certainly not something they just put into the game and then they have to take out because they bit off more than they could chew. This is something that actually made it into the final game, which is very exciting. Plus we already had this type of thing happening in Uncharted 3 up until Lost Legacy. So yeah, them adding in The Last of Us Part 2 was only a given, especially there's gonna be a bunch of different animations. As you guys can see, it's not gonna be the same animation over and over again. So yeah, it's in the final version of the game. Now this lets us get into the more interesting topics of things, and that's different animations and different AI techniques. We're gonna see if the E3 depiction of the game is the same as that game that we're getting in 2019. So let's get right into the bigger details. First, I actually want to talk about the stealth kills. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the E3 gameplay demo, that actually came out from a cutscene, and Ellie was actually stealth killing the Seraphite, like stabbing him in the neck with her switchblade, and you can see like this gush of blood like coming out whenever she pulled it out and she stuck it back in. Well, that effect is actually back in the final game in real gameplay as well. As you guys can see in this takedown right here, if you pay attention closely, you can see like the stream and pool of blood squirting out. So yeah, that level of detail is still there. So that's not a downgrade. Here's actually another detail that had me super duper skeptical. Even when watching the E3 gameplay demo, even I was like, okay, there's no way that's making it into the final game. So if you guys actually remember when Ellie went prone and she crawled under the car, and as the Seraphite was looking around for her, she actually pulled back the hammer of her pistol. Well, to my surprise, that animation returned to the final version of the game. That is literally insane. As you guys can see right here, Ellie just whips out her gun and just pulls the hammer back like on the fly. It happens seamlessly, and it's just happening. Like it's in the gameplay. That's like crazy. I don't know if you can actually control that, or it's like an animation that triggers off whenever you get your gun readied up and you're ready to shoot. Like I don't know exactly how it works, but I think that is just such a great level of detail. So yeah, that to my surprise made it into the game, which is not a downgrade. Now another super intricate animation that looks awesome was whenever Ellie actually picks up materials. If you guys actually think back to E3 2018, Ellie, she actually found some explosives on the ground, and when she picks it up, she does an animation where she picks it up and like throws it in a pouch and like in her back pocket. Now the reason why this really interests me is because back in the first game, the animation was very simple. Joel just kind of reached forward and you picked it up. Now she actually reaches into like a back pocket to put it up. And in the final version of the game, they made the animation even better, because now when she picks up a material, Ellie literally picks up the material. You can see the material in her hand, and it stays in her hand, and she goes down, puts it in her pocket, hand comes out, it's not there. That is an extra amount of detail that they added in the final game that was not there in the E3 demo. In the E3 demo, you did not see the material in her hand, but then now in the final version of the game, you could actually see the material go in her hand and she puts it in. It's not like an empty space. That is amazing. That is an upgrade to the max, and that is an improved upon. Okay, that is improved upon. That is an upgrade. That is bigger than being not a downgrade. That is an upgrade. Another awesome mechanic that was inside the E3 gameplay demo that returned in the final game was actually being shot by an arrow and falling down. As you guys can see in the E3 gameplay, she gets shot by the arrow, boom, she comes knocking down. In the final version of the game, the same thing happens. This isn't some extra cinematic looking thing that makes the game look better for E3 showing. This is actually inside the game. So that's very exciting that animation is still back, and it's the same exact animation from the E3 gameplay. It's the same exact thing. Now what makes it even more exciting, Ellie actually pulling out the arrow from her chest, that's still a thing. Like pulling out from her shoulder, that is still a thing in the final game. It's even been confirmed that there are certain dangers in this game that you have to get immediate attention before you can do anything else. So that is awesome. The whole animation where you're pulling out the arrow and healing yourself up, that is back in the final game. So yes, that was not anything fake. That is, you know, not downgraded. It's still here. Something else that was inside the game that they showed off was actually during the melee combat, Ellie can actually evade and dodge. So we saw Ellie dodging arrows and dodging hits inside the game of the E3 gameplay demo, and you know, that's awesome. That's like a new way to play the game. There's like the squeeze throughs, there's all that stuff. All that is in the final version of the game as well. The dodge button is actually L1. We saw this showcase whenever Ellie actually had like a mini boss fight against the stalker, where it's like press L1 to dodge. We saw that in the case whenever Ellie was actually trying to evade a dog. Like I can't even believe that a lot of this stuff is actually returning. Like I can believe it, but I just can't believe it at the same time, because you know, there's some stuff that I was expecting to be missing, and nothing is missing at all, which this game is this just proves even further that this game is not downgraded, guys. Now here's actually something else that people swore up and down that had to been fake, and that's whenever the enemies were actually talking to each other and calling each other by name. Now the reason why people actually thought this was going to be downgraded and missing from the final game is because we do know in the Last of Us E3 gameplay demo that we actually got for the very first game, they actually had like all this different stuff going on inside the gameplay that never truly made it into the final game, such as like, you know, the enemy AI smartness and the way they communicate with each other. But now in the Last of Us Part 2, in the final version of the game, we actually saw that the characters were actually, you know, talking to each other and calling each other by name. We heard like Ashley, we heard a girl scream for a dad. There was just like so many different things that were amazing and actually showed up in the final game. And I would have to say that has to be my favorite thing that they showed off in the E3 gameplay demo, that is inside the final version of the game. That is just exciting. I love how smart the AI is. I love how they communicate like that, and it just gives you like this sense of like realism. It's like I've never seen a game work like this before. That's insane. Now they actually showcased something inside the 2019 gameplay that they didn't showcase in the E3 gameplay, and that's actually listen mode. I think we all figured listen mode would have a return. So yeah, listen mode is back in the game. They showed that off, and inside the first, you know, gameplay demo, they didn't have listen mode to show off to us. So yeah, that's something that they added. And then the very last thing I want to say is that the graphics for this game still look incredible. They still look insane. I see no flaws in the graphics, and the animation work just looks very fluid. It looks just like what we saw in E3, and it pretty much looks, this game looks identical. So I just want to say right now that this game, The Last of Us Part 2, has not been downgraded at all. I can't find a flaw that really makes me upset with what I was showcased back a week ago, and I'm as hyped and as I just want to say that I have a loss for words. Like that's exactly how I feel. That was a blooper in my recording, and I just kept it in because I'm at a loss for words at how incredible that this game looks. I also want to let you guys know, don't think the gameplay that we saw a week ago is everything, because there is so much more to this game. Neil Druckmann even said this is only like a mini fraction of what he has in store for us. So the game hasn't revealed everything we were ready to see. Yes, just know when this game drops, our minds are going to be freaking blown. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this. My final verdict is that this game has not been downgraded. Now that you guys have heard my thoughts and got my verdict, I'd love to have your verdict. What do you guys think? Has this game been downgraded, or is this game just the same as we saw? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't be a troll, be descriptive. If you think it's downgraded, let me know. I'll really listen. I'm not gonna get mad. I really want to know why you think that. I also want to say, if you guys have not already, if you guys go follow me over on my social medias at Tajae Moment on Twitter and Instagram. It's a better way to connect with me and see what content I'm working on for you guys, etc. So yeah, go ahead, go in there, follow me, shoot me a DM, do whatever. We can be friends, answer some questions. I got whatever you need. And before you get out of here, if you guys could throw a brick at the like button, let's shoot for 350 likes, as well as subscribe to the channel with post notifications on, because I do upload daily Last of Us Part 2 quality content like this. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with another banger.